Chicago city budget, which is more than $500 million unbalanced. Leigh Giangreco from Crain Chicago Business joins us now on the Big 89 to talk more about it. Leigh, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
So, Leigh, we know historically in Chicago, budgets are rarely balanced. And the reason for shortfalls primarily over the past, I feel like maybe 2 decades, has been the pension liabilities. Tell us about the budget hole that Mayor Johnson presented and how big a deal pensions are now, because it feels like we always, as a city, kick the can down the road hoping something's going to happen. And at some point, they're going to have to do something about something real about the pension shortfall.
Yeah, so like you said, pensions are historically an issue. This budget is driven primarily by 2 things. The ongoing migrant crisis, which accounts for about $200 million in the next fiscal year. And then budgets are also the major driver there, which also account for a little over $200 million. I think the number is about $214 million. And basically, it is driven by personnel costs. So the people who are currently working for the city, you have to, negotiate pay for them with the unions. That's based on, living wage and, basically changes in pay, like your sort of yearly changes and everything. And then it also has to do with, like you said, paying down those pensions. So the mayor's office is not just paying down basically the minimum amount of those pensions. They're actually planning on paying advance pensions, which when I spoke with at least 2 budget experts on that, they actually applauded the Johnson administration for doing that. When you pay advance pensions, that avoids what's called negative amortization. And so basically what it means is, you don't want to just pay the minimum there, because then what's going to happen is the interest still builds and then the debt grows. So that's why, the mayor's office is paying more than what is required there. And so, that's what's causing, this huge budget hole right there is, they're trying to do what's fiscally responsible, but sometimes what's doing fiscally responsible costs money.
Absolutely. And if I can jump in here, Leigh, it's Annie from the newsroom. We've been covering, obviously, again, that city council meeting with so much going on with the migrant plan from Mayor Johnson. And of course, I'm so glad you kind of pointed out that it's not just the migrant plans and where the budget is at and how much we're in the hole for. I'm curious, considering you've done all this research and you've written so much and you've been following it so closely, boots on the ground wise, who is this going to impact? Is there a certain demographic, a certain industry, a certain area that really a lot of these pensions are not having enough money? Where do you see some of the pitfalls, and who on the ground is sort of going to get hit as hard as possible with a lot of these kind of shortcomings, if you will?
Well, that's sort of hard to tell right now. I want to be clear. The mayor's budget forecast didn't outline any of his plans for how to pay for this. And, I think that's pretty typical for a budget forecast. Basically, what the forecast says is, hey, here's how far we are in the red or in the black. And then later on, they roll out their actual plan for how they will address that as far as revenue streams or, where they can possibly cut in the city. So, it's really hard to say that, like, Chicago's 1% is going to be hit by this or, the middle class is going to be hit by this. We do know one thing from this budget forecast, which is that the mayor is sticking to his campaign promise of not raising property taxes. So, that's at least one area where Chicagoans, at least for the next year, can expect they won't be hit. And then, of course, the question becomes, okay, well, if you don't have property tax revenue, where else do you turn? And so, is that going to mean a head tax? Is that going to mean a jet fuel tax? All of that seems very unclear right now. And the mayor's office is trying to get creative with different revenue streams. He also unveiled his Bring Chicago Home resolution yesterday, and City Council officially introduced that That's his plan to fund homelessness services in Chicago by increasing the real estate transfer tax. And, one of the progressive alders, Alderwoman Maria Hedden, acknowledged yesterday that, hey, we don't want to increase property taxes, but we have to find this money from somewhere. And so that is why they're turning to the real estate transfer tax. So, I imagine that the Johnson administration might have to get creative here. But again, very difficult to tell at this point, which class of people are going to be hit the hardest in order to fill in these budget gaps.
Certainly.
And you really did a great job there of just sort of answering the next three questions that I had, which because normally it's like, oh, we're woefully short, budget wise. Where are we going to fill it? Oh, we're going to go raise property taxes. There's numero uno, right? And then you're talking about real estate transfer taxes and things of that nature, and still being unclear. Head tax, that's interesting. How would that work if they were to pursue that avenue, Leigh?
I'm going to be honest. I haven't pursued a lot of reporting on the head tax yet, so I don't feel I can properly address
That's
that
okay.
at this point.
No, I mean because there's at some point you have to sit there and say we're over $500 million in the red. How are we going to make up that money? I did like one thing that you said though about it appears the Johnson administration is trying to meaningfully change the whole pension liabilities, and you're explaining that, I think, in pretty good detail right there. So it's nice to see somebody who's sitting in the mayor's office who looks like we got to solve this thing. Is that what it feels like at City Hall?
Well, I should also note that this is the second year that they are paying down all four of those pensions. So that would be the municipal employees, laborers, firefighters, and police. So, at least this is a continuation. But, yeah, I mean, the feeling in City Hall, I guess they sketched that out in their budget. This is probably one of the clearer policies the Johnson administration has laid out at this point. They're a little over 100 days in office. And, a lot of policies, a lot of, filling in vacancies has been pretty slow moving. But it looks as far as this budget forecast that they are sticking to their campaign priorities. So at least there's some consistency there.
And Leigh, you wrote a great article taking a deeper look into everything that you're talking about today, and people can find that at chicagobusiness.com. Correct?
Yes.
We lost her for a second.
All right. Leigh Giangreco with Crain Chicago Business, thanks so much for being on the Big 89 with us today and kind of filling in the blanks there on the big budget questions. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Leigh.
Thanks so much to you both.
You bet.